Xavier basketball here on the Field of 68 Media Network. And to do that, we welcome in fourth-year head coach of the Musketeers, Travis Steele. And Travis, your team is coming off a year in which you started so strong at 8-0, and then things went in the other direction. But you welcome pretty much everybody back, your major impact players. You bring in a couple of transfers. I want your reaction to this statement. If I say this, what's your reaction? This is the year where there's no reason why the Xavier Musketeers should not be getting back to the NCAA tournament.
I agree. I mean, I think we have the talent. I think we have the experience to get it done. Our guys are really, really hungry. We've had a great offseason. Like you said, John, we've bring back the bulk of our roster, of our production from last year. Plus, we've added some really talented transfers and a talented freshman. So our depth's good. We got the right character in our locker room. We got the right competitiveness in our locker room. Really good camaraderie. So I know, listen, our group is really excited. Our goal is to win the Big East and to obviously advance in that NCAA tournament.
What was the off-season approach when you end the way that you did, and you know that that's not what is up to expectations for Xavier basketball?
Yeah, I think, number one, we just kind of focused on each guy's weaknesses, continue to build our roster out, get better. That was number one. Number two, we got to get better on the defensive end. I felt like when we came out of all those COVID breaks, man, I thought defensively we were just horrendous. And it really affected us down the stretch. And our defense has got to be better. We got to be a top 25 defensive team in the country, which I think, again, we have the size to do this year. We've gotten a lot bigger, physically, stronger, but we're also a lot taller. I think that'll really help us on that defensive end, but just getting that defensive mentality and that toughness that we need to be able to play with to win in the Big East.
Let's look at the star power on this team. Paul Scruggs comes back for a fifth season. What does it mean? Everything.
Paul is he wants to go out the right way, John. Last year he felt like the year was obviously an abnormal year. It was an abnormal year for the whole world, right? We were in the middle of a pandemic, but he didn't like the way that it ended. And he knows how good we can be. And I think that just shows you, again, his character, his leadership. He wants to go out the right way here at Xavier, man. Xavier means a heck of a lot to him, and he wants to go out on top.
Travis, as we head into the media days and the polls and all the preseason, you know what? The thought in mind from some is that, okay, Colin Gillespie's back at Villanova. All right, St. John's has Julian Champagny and Pasha Alexander. But I do feel like, personally, that Paul Scruggs does not necessarily get as much national love as maybe he deserves. What would you say about this kid as a Big East Player of the Year type of guy?
Yeah, I think he should be definitely in the conversation. You talk about his toughness, his versatility, his ability to impact the game in multiple ways, whether it's rebounding, defense, scoring, assists. He led the Big East in assists last year. He's one of the top 10 guys in assist to turnover in the entire country. We ask a lot of Paul, right? We ask a lot of Paul. And his shoulders are broad enough to do all that, man. He is a tremendous player. I think he's one of the better guards, not only in the Big East, but in the entire country as well.
You alluded to it. You had to get better defensively. And that physicality that we always think about, that hell in a cell mentality that Xavier plays with. So you bring in Jack Nunge from Iowa. You bring in Jerome Hunter from Indiana. Guys that have Big Ten experience. What exactly are you seeing from both of them?
I'll start with Jack. Jack is, number one, just physically imposing, John. He's 6'11", 250 pounds. We haven't had a guy. I mean, he's big. He's just really he's bigger than the guys we've had.
He reminds me of somebody in the past decade. I mean,
man, he not really. I think his skill set's a little bit like he's not Stainbrook that we had back a few years back, but he's skilled and smart like Matt. Now he's bigger, he's longer, but he can bang. I mean, like that's and he's coming from obviously a very physical league in the Big Ten. He was very productive, and obviously he had to kind of split minutes, in which we should have. Obviously, Luca Garza was National College Basketball Player of the Year type of a guy, and so but again, in his minutes that he played, he was very, 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 very productive on a very, very good team. He's been coached. He's smart. Again, like I said, on both ends, like he's going to provide us a huge physical presence that we need and skill, right? He can think. And then you got Jerome. Jerome's a tough kid. He's versatile. He's about 6'8". He can play inside, outside, kind of all over the floor. I felt like we needed one more of those guys, John, on our team last year. You had Colby, who's 6'5", 6'6", but we needed one more versatile, kind of long guy in the Big East. Jerome will provide that for us this year.
It's year 3 for Zach Freemantle. You've talked about his toughness, the way that he plays basketball. It has added something. And I feel like at times last year watching your team, Zach had so much on his plate to try to do for you. Maybe he needs a little bit of help, and that's what you've done here with bringing some of these guys in. How will Zach Freemantle be different as a junior when we're watching him play?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, John. He had to play a lot of 5 last year, and you think about it like you're playing against, some of these dudes, Ike Yabagu, he's 7'2". He looks like a mountain out there. And it's like Zach can play the 5 some. There's no question. But to ask him to do it for 32 minutes a game, I think that's a really, really tall task for him. Zach's more of a 4. He can play the 4 and the 5, and now we'll be able to do that with as Deonte Miles has continue to emerge, and Jack Nunge. Now we have 6'11". We're way bigger. But Zach in general, we're going to play through him on offense. Perimeter, post, all over the floor. Rebounding, he's a tremendous rebounder. He averaged almost 10 rebounds a game last year as a sophomore. Defensively, he has to be much better. I think that's where he's got to impact the game in a bigger way. He's got great size. He's athletic. He has the ability, John, I think, to really defend inside and outside. He's got to be able to show that this year to become a complete player for us.
Does he have it in him?
He absolutely does. You always ask yourself, number one, is he athletic enough? Yes. He moves. He's very mobile. He's tough enough. He's strong enough. He's got to do it for us to be a really good team.
So you brought up that name, Deonte Miles, and the national person might not know much about Deonte Miles, but this kid is a truck of a human. He is a big, big man, but we just haven't seen enough on the court. How much are you expecting to move? Is he now going to be part of this rotation?
Yeah, he's had a great offseason, John. That started in the spring, summer, and here into the fall. He's been tremendous. He's different. Like Jack Nunge's more ground bound, I should say, whereas Deonte's a high flyer. Deonte's athleticism, being at 6'11", is a difference maker. Both protecting the rim, playing out on the perimeter defensively, and then also just putting pressure on the rim. He's one of those guys, a little bit like Clint Capella is in the NBA. You can just throw the ball up, 12, 13 feet in the air, and he's just going to go get it above everybody else and dunk the ball. Deonte has that ability. We got to keep him healthy. Last year he got banged up, and that kind of stunted his growth last year during the season. But I would expect big things out of Deonte this year. Again, because like I said, last year you look at us, I felt like our physicality on the glass and around the rim was hurt. We got to be a little bit bigger. We got to be able to play Zach at the 4, and play Jack and Deonte and guys like that. Makes us a heck of a lot bigger and more physical.
For a good portion of the year, you had the nation's leader in 3-point field goal percentage, Nate Johnson. He gets nicked up late in the year. He's out, and so now he's back here. The senior just gives you a different dimension. What are your thoughts on him here coming back to Xavier and back healthy?
Yeah, I was, John, I didn't know if he would come back. I didn't have to talk him into it. He thought about it for 24 hours. And he said, Coach, man, I thought we were a great team. And then I got hurt. And then COVID, he said, it's just kind of a weird year. And I said, hey, do what's best for you. This is time to be. I want to make that loud and clear to Nate. And he, you know what? He thought about it for 24 hours. Say, Coach, I'm all in. I love this place. Love our program. Love my teammates. I want to play in the NCAA tournament. I want to compete for a Big East championship. He's a game changer, John. Like the gravity that he creates on the floor is immense. It creates space for guys like Fremantle and Paul to be all league players, right? To be conference player of the year candidates. You need a guy like Nate. Nate is an elite shooter. He knows who he is. He's a really good defender. I thought he was our best defensive player last year as well. So it's like, you know, he's a tremendous player. We're very fortunate to have him back.
Then you have a sophomore, Kobe Jones. Who is Kobe Jones, and what's the biggest thing that he's been working on?
He has really worked on a shot, John, like to be consistent. And he gets up every morning. He's in the gym. He shoots 500 threes every day. He's a machine. He's going to take a huge jump. Last year, I thought we asked a lot of him, John, as a freshman, and he was in quarantine a lot, so he really didn't have any non-conference. But we asked him to kind of be the guy that we really were going to count in, night out, which is hard for a freshman at times. And you know what? Like he's ready. I would expect him to take an enormous jump this year. We're going to play through him a lot. He's just so intelligent. He could score, but he can makes everybody around him better. Obviously, he can rebound and defend. He's another guy that can really impact the game in a lot of different ways.
I want to talk about you for a second, your path all the way to calling Xavier home. And you've talked at length about why Xavier is home and you and your wife saying, let's bet on Xavier, let's make Xavier our home. But, you know, there's so many guys in coaching, young guys that go through different pathways. You see it with guys that you bring in on your staff, GAs that are trying to work for it. So, like, when you're starting out in your career, you know, you had time with Indiana. You were at Wabash Valley. You had Ohio State under Coach Manta. Like, what's a wild coaching story from your younger years where you just think, like, man, this is crazy, but this is what I want to do. Like, this is part of the grind. This is part of the – tell me something wild.
Well, when I was a GA at Ohio State, John, I had no money, right? I mean, I had zero – I mean, I didn't have a dime to my name. So I actually, when I was at Ohio State, I actually lived in the arena. I didn't have an apartment. I didn't have enough money to get an apartment, right? But I knew I wanted to obviously get into college basketball, and I was going to do whatever it took, right? And Coach Mata gave me an opportunity, which I'm so grateful for. But I actually slept. So I'd have my timer. I'd have my alarm clock. You'd laugh, John. So I knew when the maintenance people would come around the building. So I'd start off sleeping about 1 a.m. around in the office. And then I knew about 4 a.m. they would roll in at the office. That's when I'd go down to the locker room. So I would be changing spots where I would sleep at throughout the night, depending upon, you know, just the employees' schedules around the building. But you know, you got to make sacrifices in this business, you know, if you want to get in and you know, but you know what, it was a great experience for me. I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was awesome. And obviously helped me kind of set myself on, you know, a good path. You know, Coach Mata gave me a great opportunity.
So did you ever have a couple too many, like, and then, you know, they walk into the room and you're in there or no, or
John, I was on it. I had my alarm. I would set like 3 alarms. I'd have it ready. I'd be like, man, I'm gonna wake up. You know, I'd be like a fly on the wall. Nobody knew I was even there.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is incredible. So right in, let's see, that would be Value City. No, what was the in the shot?
Schottenstein. Yeah, the shot.
The shot. Yeah, you lived inside the shot. I
lived inside the shot. I didn't have to pay any rent. So it was great.
Did you even have to ask your like, or was it just a foregone conclusion? Like, how did you approach, hey, I'm going to live here?
Just did it. I said, hey, listen. Yeah, I just did it. I just said, hey, listen, this is what Coach Mata knew. And, you know, so he was good with it. I said, hey, listen, I'm going to spend all my time here anyways. I'm here with the guys. You know, at the time when you're a GA, I'm just around our players all the time, getting them extra shots up. So I was always available for them, whether it was 1 a.m. or 6 a.m. or whatever it was.
So you have that Ohio State connection and Coach Mata, and now for the first time, Ohio State is going to come to the Cintas Center and play a game. I guess in a way that is the full circle of your journey, right? Like now you're at Xavier. 10 years ago, if you had said to someone in the state of Ohio, yeah, Ohio State's going to visit Xavier, they would look at you like you had 10 heads because they would say, Ohio State's never going to visit Xavier. But now Xavier's in the Big East, and this is possible. Can you speak to this game, what it's going to mean, and what it is going to be like at the Cintas Center when the Buckeyes and Musketeers meet in the Gavitt games?
It is going to be absolutely pandemonium in here, John. I can tell you our fan base is extremely excited to get the Buckeyes here. But, they got a great program. We got a ton of respect for them, right? Chris Holtman's a good friend of mine, does a great job, does a tremendous job. But it's a great opportunity for us. But like you said, John, you look at it, when we made the transition from the Atlantic 10 to the Big East, these are the type of moments that we knew would come, right? It's continue to grow our program nationally, the brand, and now we're able to get, Ohio State in here, which is an awesome opportunity for us and our program.
The expectations, I don't always like when people are like, what are your expectations? Because we know what the expectations that you have on yourself and your kids, and that's the way that the programs run. I mean, you walk into the Cintas Center and hey, basketball, winning, those two need to align. What do you think it's going to take to win and to win in March?
Yeah, I think defense. Defense travels, defense and rebounding. We're going to score, John. We got enough firepower on our team. We're going to score a lot of points. We're going to share the ball. And that's part of our culture that I think, I give Paul Scruggs a lot of credit for. I thought in the last year, we really changed our way that we played offensively. Our ball moved extremely well. I mean, we were top 10 in the country in assists per game. That will be there. We got to add the defense to it, the physicality piece. Like you said, the hell in the cell mentality, right? That's what Xavier's been known for a really, really long time. That's who we are. That's who we have to be every single day. And it obviously starts in practice, which started on September 28th, man. So, we're excited to get this thing going, man. Our guys really believe in our team and what we're doing. And we're just excited to start this journey.
Where do you see yourself placing in this league?
First, I think we're going to win the league. I really do. I think we have the talent. I think we have the experience to do it. We got the right guys. We just got to be committed on that defensive end.
Travis Steele. Travis, best of luck here this season. Looking forward to watching the Musketeers in action. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, Sean.
Before we move on, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up for Bet Rivers yet, now is the time because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, it's more secure, and it's more reliable. Now that basketball season is tipping off, get in on the action at betrivers.com today or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while I got you here, let's talk about the Field of 68 Media Network, where college basketball matters most all year round. This is a digital media and podcast network that we've been building over the course of the last year. We have shows hosted by some of your favorite players covering the program that they love the most. AJ Guyton hosts the House of Hoosier. Eric Devendorf covers Syracuse on the Scorer's Table. Dan Dickow hosts the Gonzaga Bulldog broadcast. We have Florida's Patrick Young and Duke's Andre Dawkins and North Carolina's Shammond Williams and Michigan's Stu Douglas and Illinois' Deion Thomas. The list goes on and on and on. We have more than 30 shows right now. So hit the links below and check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure that you go check out the Field of 12 Media Network, your home for college football.
So you've heard from Xavier head coach Travis Steele on the Musketeers. Now let's get the experts' opinions. We welcome in the Cincinnati Enquirer's Adam Baum, who reports on the Musketeers daily, as well as another guy who's around this program, was inside the Musketeers' first practice. From Musketeer Report, a 24/7 sports site, it's Rick Browering joining us to break down Xavier. So, Rick, you were at that first practice. What did you see?
Well, I saw a lot to like if you're a Xavier fan, which is to be expected. They have so much returning. A lot of them are known commodities, but there was also some interesting things from the newcomers' perspective. I think the biggest takeaway for me was two things. One, Colby Jones looks like he is undoubtedly going to make the big jump from freshman to sophomore year. He looked like the best player in the gym, quite honestly, at the first day of practice. And then also, another thing that really stuck out to me was Jerome Hunter, the Indiana transfer coming over. I quite honestly had him pegged for a backup role and didn't necessarily know exactly where he'd be in terms of competing for starter minutes. After seeing him in action at the first day of practice, granted, this is a little bit of an overreaction after only one day, but just seeing the size, the athleticism, the inside-out ability on offense, the way he defends, Xavier needed a guy more like him last season. And quite honestly, I think he's going to be right in the mix for starter minutes here during the preseason.
Adam, looking at the state of this program, is it fair to say Xavier basketball must make the NCAA tournament this season?
I think it's absolutely fair. I think the popular phrase that's going around among the Xavier fan base, and I know me and Rick talked about it recently, was there's no excuses this year. You have what looks to be a loaded roster, easily the deepest and most talented roster that Travis Steele has had since taking over as Xavier's head coach. You have to get the job done this year. You need to be a team that can prove that you can get better throughout the course of the year and be playing your best basketball in March. You need to be at the top half of that Big East Conference and prove that you're one of those teams in the top four, I think. And then you need to make the NCAA tournament. I don't remember the exact dates, but the last time that Xavier's men's basketball program went 4 straight years without making it to the NCAA tournament was back in the 1980s, I believe. So there's a lot on the line this year. The expectations are really high. And I think that they have the roster and the team to get it done this year.
Rick, what are your thoughts on the Travis Steele era thus far and how you look at this upcoming season?
Well, I think the Travis Steele era can be whatever you want it to be right now from an outsider's point of view, right? Like if you think Travis Steele has done a good job and got dealt a bad hand of luck on a couple different occasions, and last year was so crazy with all the COVID stoppages and everything, I could see you saying, I think Travis Steele has done a good job. Look at the way he's recruited, and his teams clearly want to play for him. The fact that Nate Johnson and Paul Scruggs came back for super senior years, and Kiki Tandy thought about going to the transfer portal and then came back, clearly suggests that his guys are bought in and like being in that locker room, and they have good chemistry. So there's plenty of things to like. At the same time, if you're a Xavier fan who's saying, look, multiple years in a row now, we have folded down the stretch. We had winnable games to play our way into the tournament. We couldn't find a way to get that done. The defense hasn't been as good. The defensive rebounding, which has been a Xavier staple for years and years, hasn't been as good. They're not getting to the free throw line as much, which, again, a Xavier staple. And they're not shooting the ball well from three-point range for 3 straight years. So I think you can make a lot out of it either way. And right now, we just don't have a complete answer on Travis Steele yet.
Adam, anything to add?
I think Rick did a pretty good job. The one thing I will say is if you look at this program as a whole right now, you'd say all the things that Rick just said. You know, they have a very deep, very talented roster. Guys clearly want to play for Travis Steele. They've got stability among the coaching staff. They've got another really good recruiting class on the way. But the one thing that they're still sort of waiting on is to really win those meaningful games. You know, the last 2 years, the way the season has ended is they've ended the year with 3-game losing streaks, when easily you win 1 or 2 games in either one of those stretches, and you're probably talking about an NCAA tournament team, and they weren't able to get it done. So that's the biggest thing I'm looking for this year is, can they get it done when it matters?
Can they get it done when it matters? So here's my big question, and I'll stay with you on this, Adam. There's a difference between who the leader of the team is, in my opinion, and who the killer on the team is. So you might have a really good leader, but do you have a killer? Do you have someone who says, I am putting the game away? When J.P. McCura goes to Seton Hall and quite literally says, we are not losing this game. We're going to win this game. The game is over. I'm taking control of the game. When Trayvon Blewett says against Cincinnati, not happening on my court. When Najee Marshall says against Cincinnati, "It is my day. We are not losing. End of story." Like, Paul Scruggs is heart and soul. He is. And I think the next step for him is maybe to be that killer. Maybe he is that guy. But do you differ at all when you think about, like, leader, killer, if they're going to close out games, what it takes? What are your thoughts on that whole theory of mine?
Well, I know Rick has a lot to say about this too, because we just talked about this quite recently, actually. It's funny that you bring this up, but I think that's certainly a fair point, and it's well warranted. And it's a little bit confusing because if you remember just last year, there were a few games where I thought Paul Scruggs was that killer. At UC in the crosstown shootout, he took that game over late and really played well down the stretch to keep it sort of at bay and secure the win. He did it at Butler earlier in the season, coming off that COVID pause. But the inconsistency in being that guy is, I think, why you're even asking this question, because when you look at the way last season ended, they clearly, and this is a point Rick made really well the other day, but they clearly, in those last 3 losses, they did not have the best player on the floor in each of those 3 games. When you would think with all 3 of those being winnable matchups, they just needed one guy to take over that game late. I think Paul Scruggs has some of that DNA in him to be a killer late in games, but it's a question of consistency. Maybe Rick can shed a little bit more light on this, but I think one guy who does really have the potential to take over a game late and maybe win it is a guy Rick already mentioned in Colby Jones.
Rick?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Colby do that in one of the games last year. I think it was the Providence game. And then Adam Kunkel also hit a game winner late. And I don't think what you're talking about is just game winners who gets the very last shot. I think it's more about, hey, maybe you've got a 5-point lead with 2 minutes to go, and you've got the guy who's going to take control, make the big shot, or get to the free throw line, or just make sure that you don't lose control of that game, or vice versa. If you're down a few possessions, he's going to make sure you get a good possession, and he's going to get you a bucket somehow, some way to get you back in that game. And last year, I just didn't think – look, Paul Scruggs and Zach Freemantle, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find many better tandems in the entire Big East heading into this year. So Xavier has as much high-end talent, I think, as most teams in the conference. But that question that you brought up, John, is still one that they have to answer. Who's going to be the guy that says, we're not losing tonight? Our season's on the line. We're playing against Butler. We're not going to let Chuck Harris. Or we're playing against Georgetown. We're not going to let Chudier Bele just take over the game and dominate us the way they did at the end of last season. They've got to figure that stuff out.
All right, Rick, I'll stay with you here. Fact or fiction? The acquisitions of Jack Nunge and Jerome Hunter are going to make Zach Freemantle much more comfortable on this Xavier team.
I'll say fact, and I don't know that always means that he'll be playing the 4 and one of those guys will be at the 5. I think there are still times where Xavier will be best off getting more shooters on the floor, getting Colby Jones at the 4, and playing Zach Freemantle at the 5 still. The nice thing is they have more options now inside with Hunter and Nunge in terms of defending lower post players, because clearly there were times where Zach just either didn't have it or didn't want to get in foul trouble to take himself off the court or what have you, but he was just not able to offer enough resistance, rim protection, and rebounding on that defensive end inside. Now that they won't be asking him to do that nearly as much this year.
Adam, Xavier had the leader in three-point field goal percentage for a good portion of last season. Then he gets hurt, and like the domino effect that results at the end of last season, this played a part, in my mind. Nate Johnson supplied perimeter consistency to Xavier basketball. When Xavier beat down Oklahoma, Nate Johnson was hitting shots. Adam Kunkel, well, everybody was hitting shots that night. But the point being, to me, heading into last season, I was thinking Nate Johnson or someone, Xavier's got to shoot the basketball better from the perimeter. Can you reflect on Nate Johnson, Adam Kunkel, Jones as well with that perimeter shot coming along, the importance of being able to have catch-and-shoot guys reflected in the Big East assist leader from last year, Paul Scruggs?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a theme that has followed the last 3 seasons. It's followed Xavier closely because even with what Nate Johnson did last year, I think he finished the season shooting 45% from three-point range. Xavier still, as a team, shot it really bad last year from beyond the arc. And they have not had that since Travis Steele took over. And I think a healthy Nate Johnson certainly helps. But you also bring up a guy like Adam Kunkel, who I believe he shot 28% from three-point last year. And I think he's a way better shooter than that. So they need to have guys who can consistently contribute from beyond the arc, because I think that's been a serious missing piece for Xavier over the last few years. And honestly, when you watch those games, when they're sort of no one's knocking down any shots, it's very hard for them to do anything offensively. There is no rhythm, no flow whatsoever. If they can find a way to get Nate Johnson back, it's going to be hard, because I think last year he shot well above his career average. So, for him to do that again, I think it would be asking a lot, but who's not to say that he's not going to be a 40% three-point shooter or something like that. They need to get guys around him, though, and have multiple guys who can knock down shots consistently and really soften up the defense against whoever they're playing, because if they can do that this year, I think it'll make life a lot easier on themselves. And if you look at college basketball as a whole, if you want to do anything, you have to have guys that can knock down shots. It's just that's the way that the game is going, and it's been a glaring omission from Xavier for the last few years.
Yeah, when you combine that shooting percentage with, and this is what Travis Steele said in our conversation earlier, he said, look, who we said we try to be defensively, last year we were not. They came off COVID pauses, and those played a role. But defensively, Xavier, they didn't look like Xavier. Like, at times they were beating teams because they were just, like, outscoring them or holding them off a little bit or a couple of plays. But when they were losing games, it's because defensively things were not going well. Rick, is that what determines how good this team is? If they get back to that Xavier physical, tough-mindedness that we see out of this program?
Well, I certainly think Travis Steele feels that way. And I don't know if it's as much about like what style of defense or the way they're playing their defense as it is about having a more significant presence inside. Last year, it just felt like they were really small and a little unathletic all the time. I think Jason Carter gave a great effort every time he was out there, but he was giving up size and he's giving up athleticism. And then when you went to put in a different four, a backup four, you were a lot of times going to like CJ Wilcher, who was an undersized shooter. And that didn't work out any better for them in terms of being tougher and better defensively. So I do think that matters, but I also think it's more about upgrading the overall size of your personnel, and they've done that with the additions of Nunji and Hunter, and even getting Ben Stanley back could help with that as well.
Adam, you did a story on Jack Nunji. What did you learn about the Iowa transfer?
Well, I learned a lot. I learned that he's a quality human being, first and foremost. I think I said this to Rick the other day, but you look at what he's been through the last few years on the court, off the court. I mean, he lost his father unexpectedly 4 days before the start of last college basketball season. He suffered his second season-ending significant knee injury in the same knee a few months later. He still is not going full go in practice, and I was just really impressed talking to him. He's a smart kid. He's kind. He's already graduated from Iowa. He's at Xavier working on his master's. And here's a guy who, because of the COVID season, because of 2 redshirt seasons at Iowa, he was at Iowa for 4 years, and he still has 3 years of eligibility left at Xavier should he choose to use them. So this is a guy that could be around for a little while at Xavier. And I think they're being very slow, very cautious with him because, that knee has been through so much the last few years. But to Rick's earlier point, if this is a guy, I feel like he already proved himself at the high major level. He was able to play at Iowa. He was, a backup to Luca Garza, one of the best big men in the country. He went toe-to-toe with a lot of those big guys in the Big East or in the Big Ten when he was healthy. If he can stay on the floor at Xavier and be a consistent part, I think it's going to go a long way towards Xavier having success.
Let's talk about the schedule. Rick, start with non-conference. Okay, so you get tune-ups against Niagara and Kent State. You hope you're 2-0 there and that you take care of business, TCOB. Then November 18th, everyone in their right mind is going to find their way into the building at the Cintas Center for Xavier and Ohio State. I think that this might be the best work by the Big East and Big Ten conferences in their Gavitt game scheduling. They did a brilliant job this year of scheduling non-conference games that are quite compelling that you wouldn't otherwise get. So you've got Xavier, Ohio State. Then they go in the preseason NIT. They'll face Iowa State, and then either the Bates, Duren, Penny Hardaway, Rasheed freaking Wallace, Memphis show, or Virginia Tech. The Memphis show would be pretty fun to write about in Brooklyn. Okay. And then they're at Oklahoma State, Cincinnati on December the 11th. Then they get into conference play. We'll get into league play in a moment. But, Rick, this is a quality non-conference slate, and my goodness, some of the best moments are going to come at the Cintas Center.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the exciting thing for fans, right? I mean, the fact that you get a similar amount of high major opponents as you would normally get, but one of them is Ohio State, who's just a rivalry type game that you really can't ever schedule. And the last time you played them, all hell broke loose, and Xavier fans want revenge so bad, and they're not going to get it in a regular season non-conference game, obviously, considering what was on the line in that Justin Cage, Greg Oden situation. But still, it is just a really, really fun game to play from a fan base perspective. Then you also have the Crosstown Shootout at home this year. And I mean, UC hasn't won at Xavier in 20 years. And you would think with a new coach and a whole turned over roster, you probably wouldn't see that happen either. So, I mean, this is a really fun slate for fans. And then, oh yeah, by the way, you might get that Memphis game at a neutral site like you talked about, which could be potentially a top 10 team at that point, depending on what's going on. I mean, certainly a top 15 team, I would think, and Ohio State will be a top 25, top 20 type team. So you really got some nice matchups there. And even the Oklahoma State game, I think, is a good one too.
The league slate, Adam, I'll tell you what, they didn't get many favors here. I mean, early on, I look at the league slate and I say, okay, wow, like, you know, they better be ready to go for conference play because you have Marquette at home. If you're playing the schedule game, which I don't like to play, but if I were playing it today, I would chalk that up as they should be able to start league play with a win. Now, the conference opener that they've had oftentimes has been against Villanova. For whatever reason, they've been slated against Villanova. It seems like December 30th or right around there. Well, this year it's game 2. It's at Nova. It is before Christmas. But what I look at is you play 3 of 4 on the road after that conference opener. And then when you do come back home, you host Villanova on January 12th. So I guess when the conference schedule came out, do you like Villanova twice early, like twice in the first half of your league slate? Do you hate it? What do you think about that whole deal?
Yeah, you know, I think I've kind of gone back and forth over the years. Like, would you rather see a team that you expect to be really good get it out of the way twice early on, or would you rather get more time together with your team and get a shot at them later on when you feel like maybe you've got a little bit more figured out about your team? I mean, who's to say? I think the thing with Villanova is, like, I don't know that it necessarily matters when you play them or what's happening around it. I guess it does matter a little bit what's happening around it, but they're going to be so good that I don't necessarily know that it matters whether you play them early or late in the year. But I do think if you look at the Big East schedule, I don't know that Xavier necessarily has a ton to be upset about. There's not like a crazy stretch where I think, man, they'll be lucky to survive that going 2-4, 1-5. I think the way that it shook out, there's no crazy road swings. I think they have to be pretty pleased with it. And to what you and Rick just spoke about, like with the non-conference being what it is, I think that this team has an opportunity to be really prepared, really well tested going into Big East play, which is something that you don't always get going into league action. So it'll be interesting. I think the big thing, though, for this Xavier team is, like, we already hammered this point home a few times, but how are you going to finish the league? Because you have not finished it well the last 2 years. This is a team that desperately needs to navigate that Big East schedule and come out the other side playing your best ball, because it hasn't happened the last 2 years, and I think they have the team to do it this year.
Yeah, you've got at Connecticut February 19th, at Providence February 23rd. That's certainly challenging. You host Seton Hall. That is to me, guys, as we do this podcast, it will be out later today. But that game's going to be a national broadcast on Fox between Xavier and Seton Hall. I'm giving you a little giveaway there. That's going to be a huge opportunity there for the Musketeers, against Seton Hall late in the month of February, and potentially two teams that are hanging around the NCAA conversation. Then you're at St. John's, and then you host Georgetown March the 5th. So it's not like you look at the late conference schedule and you say, wow, impossible, not gonna work out. They host Georgetown to close. That game at St. John's is going to be very important. But for this team, look, it sometimes hasn't even mattered on the opponent, Rick, because they failed against DePaul. Like, they failed against programs that they should be beating. So, I mean, what do you think here? Like, what's the expectation level, and what needs to change for them to be different?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the exclusive. I just got that tweet off that Fanta says it's going to be a national broadcast, but I'm teasing. But you are right. It really hasn't mattered the opponent late in the season. I mean, there's been times where their back's against the wall and they've got to go play a good Creighton team and they beat them, but then they lose to a bad Butler team and a bad DePaul team and things like that. So you're right. I mean, it's more about ever since Sean Miller was at Xavier, they've had a saying that do what we do. They worry about themselves. They dictate what they're doing, and you have to adjust to them. They need to get back to that to a certain extent. And I don't necessarily mean like with their system and what they're running, but I just mean when they've got the opportunity to close their season out and make the NCAA tournament with winnable games, figure out a way to get that done. Whether that's on the coaching staff or the players, I don't know, but they'll have to start winning those games.
All right. Prediction. Give me an order of where they're going to finish in the Big East, Adam, and what's this team's ceiling? Because I hate when people are like, yeah, they're going to make the round of 32 and then they'll be out. Like, because you don't effing know. That's always my rant with people. And then, are there not 68 teams that you say they could make the Sweet 16? Like, you have no freaking clue today what they're going to do in the tournament. But where do they finish? What's the ceiling? There's my rant, Adam.
Yeah, so it's proper timing for me that you asked me this question now, because I'm doing a little bit of a Big East preview. And I think if you look at this roster, I mean, obviously, guys need to get healthy. I know Fremantle's banged up a little bit right now. Jack Nungy still needs to get going. But I think there's no reason that this Xavier team is not a top 4 team in the Big East, in my opinion. And to take it even further, I think if this team can figure it out and they can really get it rolling, I see their ceiling in the Big East. I think they could even be as high as that number 2 team, but I think it's probably more realistic that they're going to be in that 3 to 4 range. But I absolutely think that this is an NCAA tournament team. And to sort of preface that, I've thought this more than once about over the last 3 years that they had an NCAA tournament roster, and I've obviously been wrong. But I think that there's no way that you add the pieces that they added and you return what they return and you don't make the NCAA tournament. There's no excuse this year. I think that they can get it done, honestly, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this year looks like as a whole.
Rick?
Yeah, I'm in a really similar boat to Adam there. I think somewhere between 2nd and 4th is dead on. I think most years I always say everyone in the Big East is going to be 500, and then we adjust from there. Like, Villanova will be several games over 500. Whoever's second will be a couple more. But, like, this is one of the first years in a while for Xavier that I would say they should be over 500, clearly. At least 2 games or so, I would think. And that's always a war to get there. But this team should be consistent enough and talented enough to do so. And if that's the case, top 3 or 4 in the conference, you finish over 500 in conference play, I think they're looking at somewhere between a 6 to 9 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they got to travel well. They got to win on the road. Like this year, you got to beat DePaul on the road. You got to beat Marquette on the road. You need to beat Georgetown on the road. You need to beat Creighton on the road. Like, you have to go into this season. You have to say, we need to beat those teams away from home. And then what are you going to do at Providence, at Seton Hall, at UConn, at St. John's? Because that's likely going to determine, at Butler as well, that's going to determine how well you end up doing. Like, when you use that 500 theory, you're absolutely right. Where are you going to steal games along that way? I don't think there's any doubt. At the Cintas Center, they're going to be tough to beat. They're going to be a team that should be able to flourish at home. And you know what? Plain and simple. Like, we look at the Gavitt games often. It's the second week of the season. You're like, it's so early. Xavier needs to take down Ohio State in Cincinnati. I mean, I know that it is extremely early in the season, but Ohio State not having Dwayne Washington back changed a lot of their complexion. Xavier's on a comparable ground with them. If they lose the game, it's not the end of the world, but that is such a precious opportunity early in the season. And when we talk about getting over a mental edge, you said it, Adam, you got to win the big game. Right off the bat, they're at home when Ohio State's not going to be their best. They're going to still try to figure out who they are. This Xavier team, in my opinion, should not be trying to figure out a bunch of stuff in November. They're good. They're good, and they have enough weapons to be good. So that's my expectation. I would pick them fourth in the Big East. I think they could finish as high as 2. I don't think anybody's beating Villanova out in the Big East Conference. I think that the Musketeers, depending on their draw, can certainly be a team that you expect to win a tournament game, if not more. So Adam Baum, Rick Broering, the season's just around the corner. I'm thinking of Skyline Chili and those pyrotechnics. Rick, you're a chili guy, right?
Oh, John, please. Yes.
Perfect. And Montgomery in as well. That's the full Cincinnati. Exactly. And to the Cincinnati Bengals folks, best of luck on your AFC North venture. We'll keep things rolling here for those Cleveland Browns folks. Adam Baum.
Keep that hat right by your laptop, don't you? Just in case.
We're worried about the Jaguars right now. We haven't advanced to the AFC North picture.
One at a time, John. One at a time.
Thank you, guys. Follow these guys, Adam at Cincinnati Enquirer and over at Musketeer Report 24/7 sports site. You can follow Rick Broering there. That is your Xavier 2021-22 preview here on the field of 60.